Greetings, everyone. This is the Gardening Snail of Livingston, California, just trying to keep the community informed and local government as honest as possible. This video is a reading without commentary of the government tort claim against the City of Livingston by Jose Ramirez. It was addressed December 10th, 2021. Jose Ramirez Government Tort Claim. Please take note that Jose Ramirez, claimant, or Mr. Ramirez, whose address is care of Law Office of Tanya Gomerman, 825 Van Ness, Suite 502, San Francisco, California, 94109, claims damages from the City of Livingston in the amount, computed as of the date of presentation of this claim, of an amount exceeding the unlimited civil jurisdiction of the Superior Court of California. This claim is based on the following facts. The names of the public employees causing claimants injuries are included in the summary below, plus other current and former officers, directors, employees, and agents of the City of Livingston currently unknown to claimant. The following is meant to comply with the Government Tort Claims Act at Section 910. Introduction. The following summary statement of facts prepared by counsel for Jose Ramirez is based upon information presently available and known by Mr. Ramirez and his counsel. Mr. Ramirez and his counsel have not yet completed their investigation of the facts related to this action, nor have they yet engaged in civil discovery and completed their preparation for trial in this case. Therefore, all statements below are given without prejudice to Mr. Ramirez's rights to produce evidence of any subsequently discovered facts and of any further information as such becomes known to them. This summary statement of facts is made specifically subject to the right to object to any discovery proceeding involving or related to the subject matter of the request. It is anticipated that further discovery, independent investigation, legal research, and analysis will supply additional facts, add meaning to the known facts, as well as establish entirely new factual conclusions and legal contentions, all of which may lead to additions, modifications of, and variations from the information set forth herein. Employment with the City of Livingston from 2011 to 2021. Mr. Ramirez is a highly educated Hispanic male with a master's degree in public administration. Mr. Ramirez has over 18 years of experience working as a city manager. He is a loyal public servant, having dedicated his career to helping advance the communities he serves. Mr. Ramirez holds high ethical standards and is committed to transparency and honesty within city government. Due to these ideals and his strong drive to comply with the law, the City of Livingston unlawfully terminated Mr. Ramirez from his employment and breached his employment contract. The City of Livingston, the city, or defendants, hired Mr. Ramirez as its city manager on June 17, 2011. The city and Mr. Ramirez entered into a written employment agreement which was set to expire on June 17, 2014. Due to his stellar performance in June, the city extended Mr. Ramirez's employment agreement for 2 additional years. The second employment agreement was set to expire on June 17, 2016. In or around November 2014, Wapinder Kang, herein Sergeant Kang, a sergeant in the Livingston Police Department, was elected to the Livingston City Council. Sergeant Kang was informed by the Livingston City Attorney that he could not hold a position as a sergeant and a council member, and as a result, he chose to forfeit his seat on the City Council. In December 2014, a former Livingston City official asked Mr. Ramirez to terminate certain public employees and replace them with people that would support his political agenda. Mr. Ramirez believed this request was unethical and refused to comply and instead resigned from his position. Mr. Ramirez agreed to continue working as city manager for 3 to 6 months to allow the city to find a new city manager and to achieve a smooth transition. The city, in early 2017, approached Mr. Ramirez and again asked him to return as its city manager. The city offered Mr. Ramirez a 4-year employment contract. Mr. Ramirez accepted the offer and again became the city's manager. In or around 2018, Gagandeep Kang, herein Councilmember Kang, was elected as council member for the City of Livingston. Gagandeep Kang is Wapinder Kang's brother. The brothers, Kang Brothers, reside in the same home within the city of Livingston. The same year, Gurpal Samra, herein Mr. Samra, was elected as mayor of the city of Livingston. In or around June 2020, Christopher Soria, herein Mr. Soria, or Chief Soria, was appointed for a one-year term as the police chief for the city of Livingston. On Mr. Ramirez's information and belief, Chief Soria is close friends with both Kang brothers. The Kang brother began to complain about their driveway. On May 26, 2020, Sergeant Kang contacted Mayor Samra regarding an issue with his driveway/sidewalk. Sergeant Kang argued that his driveway/sidewalk was not up to city municipal code and demanded that the city expand his driveway from 14 feet to 18 feet at the city's expense. Mayor Samra forwarded the complaint to Mr. Ramirez. Shortly after, Councilmember Kang approached Mr. Ramirez with the same driveway sidewalk issue. Mr. Ramirez informed Councilmember Kang that he would send a public works director and an engineer to assess the driveway sidewalk. The public works director assessed this driveway sidewalk and determined that there was no violation of city municipal code. Mr. Ramirez informed Councilmember Kang his sidewalk driveway complied with city municipal code. Mr. Ramirez informed Councilmember Kang that he could expand his driveway, but would have to do so at his own expense. Councilmember Kang expressed his displeasure with Mr. Ramirez's answer. In or around June 2020, Councilmember Kang continued to pressure Mr. Ramirez to get the city to pay for alterations to his private property sidewalk driveway. On a work road trip to Sonora, Councilmember Kang asked Mr. Ramirez if he, Councilmember Kang, could pay city employees to conduct an estimate and provide labor for his driveway modifications at the city's expense. Mr. Ramirez told Councilmember Kang that he should pursue a claim with Ames, the city's insurance adjuster, or otherwise it could lead to a conflict of interest, being that he was an elected public official. Councilmember Kang was willing to go to any lengths to get a discount on his driveway modification, even if that meant improperly using city employees and his title as council member. Councilmember Kang believed his neighbor had their driveway expanded at the city's expense, so he was adamant that he too wanted the city to pay for his driveway, whether the city was legally obligated to or not. Despite Mr. Ramirez telling Councilmember Kang the city would not pay for his sidewalk driveway, Sergeant Kang, on June 26, approached Mr. Ramirez about the same issue. Mr. Ramirez directed Sergeant Kang to submit a government tort claim if he did not agree with Mr. Ramirez, the public work director's, and the engineer's decision. Sergeant Kang was visibly upset but complied and completed the government tort claim form. The Kang brothers make threats to fire city employees and hold Measure V funds if the city of Livingston does not pay for their driveway modifications. On or about June 29, 2020, the Kang brothers ambushed Mr. Ramirez's office demanding that he discuss their driveway issues once again. At the time, Mr. Ramirez was meeting with Public Works Director Anthony Chavarria, Mr. Chavarria. Mr. Ramirez invited Mr. Chavarria and Human Resources Director Dana Rasmussen, Ms. Rasmussen, to attend the meeting. They agreed. During this impromptu meeting, the Kang brothers insisted the city expand their driveway and threatened to fire the city engineer, concrete staff, and withhold all Measure V funds from the city. Mr. Ramirez refused to give acquiescence to their demands or threats. The Kang brothers were visibly infuriated and stated that they would wait until the November election, where they claimed they would have the majority support needed to get the city to approve their driveway modification. The Kang brothers have a history of using their connections and influence to benefit themselves. For example, Councilmember Kang regularly participated in public safety union negotiations focusing on the police department supervisory unit, the unit Sergeant Kang was a member. Based on information and belief, Mr. Ramirez is informed this supervisory unit was granted an almost 50% raise due to Councilmember Kang's efforts. Mr. Ramirez reports the threats by the Kang brothers to City Attorney Jose M. Sanchez. On or about August 10, 2020, Mr. Ramirez emailed City Attorney Jose M. Sanchez, Attorney Sanchez, who worked for the city's retained firm Myers-Nave. Mr. Ramirez informs Attorney Sanchez about the unlawful threats the Kang brothers made during the June 29th meeting in response to the city refusing to pay for work on their sidewalk driveway. The Livingston City Council denies the Kang brothers' driveway modification claim. On or about August 18, 2020, Livingston City Council met and discussed the Kang brothers' driveway government tort claim. In order to demonstrate Councilmember Kang did not have a conflict of interest, Sergeant Kang, at a public city council meeting, took to the podium holding a piece of paper and claimed that he was the legal owner of the property, not Councilmember Kang. He stated, "I am actually the legal owner and the deed to the house is in my hand." This was false. The publicly filed deed to the property demonstrates Councilmember Kang owns the property, not Sergeant Kang. That night, the City Council voted to deny the Kang's government tort claim, thereby refusing to pay for the driveway modification. Sergeant Kang then approached City Attorney Sanchez and asked him, "How much do you want to be my personal attorney?" Mr. Ramirez interpreted this as an attempt to bribe Attorney Sanchez. That same day, Councilmember Kang submitted a request to the city for approval a proposed project on his front yard. The proposed project consisted of a garage with a second-story loft. Following this request, it became clear to Mr. Ramirez that the Kang brothers were pushing the city to pay for their driveway modifications to accommodate their proposed construction in their front yard. Mr. Ramirez is subjected to the first of many performance evaluations as a form of retaliation. Following the denial of the Kang brothers' driveway modification, Mr. Ramirez was immediately subjected to the first of many performance evaluations. Mr. Ramirez's employment contract noted that his performance would be evaluated at least once a year, but he would go on to be subjected to 6 performance evaluations in less than 1 year. It was not disclosed who had placed such performance evaluations on the agenda, but Mr. Ramirez suspected it was Councilmember Kang. Councilmember Kang's proposal for construction is denied. In or around September 2020, City Planner Randy Hatch, Mr. Hatch, reviewed the Kang brothers' front yard construction proposal and determined it did not meet city standards and thus rejected the proposal. The Shaw investigation begins against the Kang brothers. In or around September 2020, at Mr. Ramirez's insistence, the Shaw law firm conducted an investigation, into the threats the Kang brothers made against Mr. Ramirez and city staff at the June 29, 2020 meeting. Sergeant Kang persisted threatening the city, and on September 16, 2020, submitted a letter to City Hall claiming he would sue the city if it did not fix his driveway within 30 days. The Kang brothers intend to use their positions as city employees to make money and form alliances that were beneficial to their financial interests. On or about September 22, 2020, Mr. Ramirez met with restaurant owner Narinda Dola, Mr. Dola. Mr. Dola told Mr. Ramirez that the Kang brothers were trying to stop the Shaw investigation and that Councilmember Kang was using his position to try to make money. The City of Livingston initiated the process of updating the general plan. Councilmember Kang was trying to delay the general plan process in order to give him ample time to purchase property within the sphere of influence of the City of Livingston. Once these properties are annexed into the city, they significantly increase in value. Councilmember Kang was trying to delay the annexation process so that he could purchase the properties the city intended to annex. Councilmember Kang would not have known about the city's intent to annex properties had it not been for his position within the City Council. Mr. Ramirez reports Sergeant Kang's violation of the Hatch Act to City Attorney Sanchez. In or around October 2020, Sergeant Kang ran for school board. Sergeant Kang obtained an image from the city's website wherein he was dressed in full police uniform to use in his political ad, along with the words, "Elect Wapinder Kang, Merced Union High School District Governing Board, Member Area 3. The photo was then posted on Facebook. Sergeant Kang's photo violated various laws, including the Hatch Act, which states that official police uniforms are prohibited to influence or interfere with elections or nominations for office. The photo was sent to Mr. Ramirez, who reported it to Attorney Sanchez and Chief Soria. Attorney Sanchez requested that Sergeant Kang remove the photo. As of November 1st, 2020, the photo was still on Facebook. Neither Chief Soria or the city took disciplinary action against Sergeant Kang. The Shaw investigation closes and no disciplinary action is taken against the Kang brothers. In or around October 2020, the Shaw investigation closed and the findings of the investigation were never released to the public. The City Council had the authority to release the findings with a majority vote, but refused to do so despite several requests from Livingston residents. Neither Sergeant Kang nor Councilmember Kang were disciplined for their behavior and threats toward Mr. Ramirez and various city employees. The Kang brothers continue their crusade for power. In or around November 2020, serious allegations around ballot harvesting surfaced against the Kang brothers. The city's residents, city employees, and business persons complained to Mr. Ramirez that the Kang brothers collected ballots that were signed but not yet filled out. Mr. Ramirez was informed the Kang brothers were filling out the signed ballots with candidates they liked and believed would support their endeavors. Mr. Ramirez was shocked and concerned that the Kang brothers were engaging in illegal conduct. Mr. Ramirez shared these concerns with the city's election office, the district attorney, and even the Federal Bureau of Investigation, who all said they would investigate the allegations. The alliance the Kang brothers desired is cemented as their friend Mr. Aguilar becomes the mayor of the city of Livingston. In or around November 2020, Juan Aguilar was elected as city mayor, a huge victory for the Kang brothers. Prior to the start of the November elections, the Kang brothers supported Mayor Samra's political opponent, Mr. Aguilar, for mayor to strengthen their alliance within the city council. They believe Mr. Samra's loyalty lied with Mr. Ramirez, who they blame for the denial of their driveway project. It was well known that Mr. Aguilar, the Kang brothers, and Mayor Pro Tem Raul Garcia, Mayor Pro Tem Garcia, were all close friends. The Kang brothers now had 3 city council members within their alliance: newly elected Mayor Aguilar, Mayor Pro Tem Garcia, and their very own Councilmember Kang. The 2 remaining members were Councilmember Jose Moran, Councilmember Moran, and Councilmember Maria Soto, Councilmember Soto. Sergeant Kang is involved in a car accident with a pedestrian. No disciplinary action is taken because Chief Soria fails to report the incident. In or around November 2020, Sergeant Kang was involved in a car accident with a pedestrian. Despite being Chief Soria's superior, Mr. Ramirez was not informed of the accident until a city employee brought it to his attention. Mr. Ramirez suspected that Chief Soria did not report the accident, which would have triggered an outside investigation as required by protocol because of his friendship with Sergeant Kang. Allegations of inappropriate sexual comments come to light against Councilmember Kang. In or around November 2020, Jatinder Mann, Mr. Mann, a Livingston resident, filed a complaint and addressed it to Chief Soria. Mr. Mann accused Councilmember Kang of sexually inappropriate and vulgar comments towards his wife. Mr. Mann alleged that Councilmember Kang stated, "If man can't put a kid in his wife, then I will," while making a sexual thrusting gesture with his hips. Chief Soria did not address this complaint until January 2021. Interest in cannabis cultivation by Councilmember Kang and Mayor Pro Tem Garcia begins. In or around December 2020, Councilmember Kang and Mayor Pro Tem Garcia had an unscheduled meeting with Mr. Ramirez in which they eagerly inquired about leasing 40 acres the city owned for cannabis cultivation. Mayor Pro Tem Garcia mentioned that he would like to generate more funds around cannabis. Mr. Ramirez informed Councilmember Kang and Mayor Pro Tem Garcia that the current city ordinances did not allow for cannabis cultivation unless the structure was fully enclosed. Nonetheless, Mayor Pro Tem Garcia insisted that Mr. Ramirez contact real estate brokers to identify properties in which cannabis could be grown. Mr. Ramirez is subjected to a second performance evaluation. Shortly after, on January 19, 2021, the city subjected Mr. Ramirez to another performance evaluation. Nothing was communicated to Mr. Ramirez regarding his performance. The city fails to take any disciplinary action against Councilmember Kang following his inappropriate comments to a Livingston resident and refuses to release the investigation results. In or around January 2021, Mr. Mann took his complaints directly to City Council after Chief Soria failed to respond to his complaint against Councilmember Kang. Mr. Mann asked the city to hold Councilmember Kang accountable for his actions. Mayor Aguilar assured him that the city took his complaint seriously and would investigate. However, any investigation, if even conducted, was quickly closed, and the city's response was to adopt a code of conduct for all city officials. There were no repercussions taken against Councilmember Kang for his inappropriate comments. In or around February 2021, Mr. Mann returned to City Council after he was informed that no disciplinary action would be taken against Councilmember Kang. He questioned the extent of the investigation and why it was closed so quickly. Mr. Mann also raised concerns that Councilmember Kang used his connections in the police department to harass his family, including dispatching officers to his residence. Mayor Aguilar and newly appointed City Attorney Trevor Taniguchi, Mr. Taniguchi, or Attorney Taniguchi, defended the city and asked Mr. Mann if he had any witnesses. When a witness came forward affirming that he was present and heard Councilmember Kang's inappropriate comments, the city and Attorney Taniguchi failed to take any further action or reopen the investigation. Former Mayor Samra spoke at the City Council meeting and expressed his disapproval and concern of how the investigation into Councilmember Kang had been handled. He demanded that the city release the results of the investigation to the public. The City Council denied his request. Mr. Ramirez is subjected to his third performance evaluation. On or about February 2, 2021, the city conducted its third performance evaluation on Mr. Ramirez. Mr. Ramirez felt that every time he opposed Councilmember Kang's interest, his performance was evaluated. Mr. Ramirez reports the many wrongdoings of the Kang Brothers to Merced District Attorney. In or around February 2021, Mr. Ramirez spoke with Merced County District Attorney Kimberly Lewis, District Attorney Lewis, and informed her about Kang Brothers' illegal conduct and their alliance within City Council. District Attorney Lewis told Mr. Ramirez she would assign 2 senior district attorney investigators to the case, including Chief Detective West. Mr. Ramirez is subjected to his fourth performance evaluation. On or about February 16, 2021, Mr. Ramirez was subjected to his fourth performance evaluation. The City Council claimed it needed to determine if they would extend Mr. Ramirez's employment contract. Councilmember Kang, Mayor Pro Tem Garcia, and Mayor Aguilar were opposed to the idea, but due to the support of many Livingston residents who came to speak on Mr. Ramirez's behalf, the city renewed Mr. Ramirez's employment contract until June 5, 2025. Mr. Ramirez's employment agreement contained a termination section with 2 clauses, one for termination without cause and another for termination with cause. Pursuant to the agreement, if city terminated Mr. Ramirez without cause, the city was required to pay him a lump sum of his 6-month base salary. Cause was defined as 1. Theft of city property, 2. Insubordination, 3. Conviction or a felony or misdemeanor, 4. Improper use of city funds, 5. Unauthorized use of city property, 6. Willful misconduct or malfeasance, 7. Any acts of moral turpitude, 8. Other failure of good behavior that would discredit the city. Mr. Ramirez reports a violation of the Brown Act by the Kang Brothers, Mayor Aguilar, Chief Soria, and Mayor Pro Tem Garcia. In or around February 2021, Mr. Ramirez was informed by Planning Commissioner Adanan Bath, Mr. Bath, that 3 council members had violated the Brown Act. The Brown Act requires that local government business be conducted at open and public meetings. Mr. Bath reported to Mr. Ramirez that several council members violated the Brown Act by sending text messages to one another in a private group chat prior to making voting decisions. Mr. Bath also informed Mr. Ramirez that the Kang Brothers, Mayor Aguilar, Chief Soria, and Mayor Pro Tem Garcia regularly met outside city limits to discuss city matters. Mr. Ramirez reported the Brown Act violations to City Attorney Taniguchi. No action was taken in response to his complaints. Mayor Aguilar and Mayor Pro Tem Garcia follow up regarding cannabis cultivation and Chief Soria's contract. On or about February 24, 2021, Mayor Aguilar and Mayor Pro Tem Garcia came unannounced to Mr. Ramirez's office to again discuss the zoning requirements for cannabis cultivation. Mr. Ramirez questioned why there was such an interest in cannabis cultivation, as this was the second time that cannabis cultivation was brought up. The next day, on February 25, 2021, Mayor Aguilar and Mayor Pro Tem Garcia met with Mr. Ramirez to pressure him into extending Chief Soria's contract for an additional year. Mr. Ramirez informed them that he intended to proceed with the process of hiring a new police chief. The city attorney informed Mr. Ramirez that Sergeant Kang had made allegations against him. On or about March 24, 2021, Attorney Taniguchi emailed Mr. Ramirez and Chief Soria and informed them that his office and Mayor Aguilar received a complaint which alleged that the details of a Livingston police officer's performance evaluation were known by individuals not authorized to receive such information. In or around April 2021, Attorney Taniguchi informed Mr. Ramirez that Sergeant Kang had made additional allegations against him, Mr. Ramirez, and requested that Mr. Ramirez not be present in the closed City Council session on April 20, 2021. Attorney Taniguchi informed Mr. Ramirez they would hire Van Dermenden Maddox Law Firm to investigate the matter under the direction of Attorney Carl Larson. Attorney Larson. Mr. Ramirez informs the city that he is experiencing retaliation. On or about April 9, 2021, Mr. Ramirez emailed Detective West and informed him that he was experiencing retaliation following his refusal to renew Chief Soria's contract for an additional year. Mr. Ramirez wrote, "I have not caved in and I am proceeding with the process of hiring a new chief. It is my feeling that because I am not listening to their desires, I am being counseled by the mayor and the city attorney on my performance." As part of the police recruitment process, a professional panel and a community panel was selected by Mr. Ramirez to hire a new police chief. Councilmember Kang communicated his displeasure with regards to the panelist Mr. Ramirez had chosen. It became widely apparent to Mr. Ramirez that Councilmember Kang had a personal interest in retaining Chief Soria as Livingston's police chief. Mr. Ramirez is subjected to his fifth performance evaluation. Within days, on April 20, 2021, the city subjected Mr. Ramirez to a fifth performance evaluation. The City Council placed the performance evaluation on the agenda via a closed session. Many Livingston residents came and spoke out in support of Mr. Ramirez. After the closed session, the City Council reported that it was pleased with Mr. Ramirez's performance, but that there were areas that needed improvement and indicated that they wanted more communication. Then, on April 23, 2021, Sergeant Kang communicated his dislike for Mr. Ramirez to Supervisor Rodrigo Espinoza, herein Mr. Espinoza, and stated that he wanted to, quote, have puppets like other city councils have their puppets. Mr. Espinoza told Mr. Ramirez about Sergeant Kang's comments. The city initiates the search for a new law firm to represent them. In or around May 2021, Myers-Nave Law Firm stopped representing the City of Livingston, and the City Council needed to hire a new law firm. A recall effort is initiated by Livingston residents against Mayor Aguilar, Mayor Pro Tem Garcia, and Councilmember Kang. On or about May 28, 2021, residents initiated a recall effort against Mayor Aguilar, Mayor Pro Tem Garcia, and Councilmember Kang by Livingston residents. Frustrations among city residents and council members came to a head when no action was taken against Councilmember Kang after his inappropriate sexual comments against Mr. Mann's wife. Mr. Ramirez appoints a new police chief and is threatened by former police chief Soria. In or around June 2021, Mr. Ramirez appointed John Markle, Mr. Markle or Chief Markle, as the new chief of police for the city of Livingston. Former Chief Soria was furious and stated to Chief Markle, "Tell Jose Ramirez bye and that he won't have a job in 4 months." These comments solidified Mr. Ramirez's theory that there was an alliance between Chief Soria, Councilmember Kang, Mayor Aguilar, and Mayor Pro Tem Garcia to terminate his employment. The City Council is set to hire White Brenner LLP, but is met by pushback led by many Livingston residents who have concerns regarding the firm's billing practices. In or around July 2021, the City Council began their search for a new law firm to represent the City of Livingston. White Brenner LLP was at the top of that list. A City Council meeting was set to discuss which firm should be hired. At this City Council meeting, Livingston residents raised concerns about White Brenners being hired to represent the city after they heard that the firm had charged a neighboring city an exorbitant amount of attorney's fees. A Livingston resident shared an article from the Merced Sun-Star in which attorney and managing partner of White Brenner LLP, Doug White, Attorney White, had charged the nearby city of Atwater $715,000 in attorney's fees within a year. It also was well known that Attorney White and his firm had pushed for cannabis-based businesses in other cities in which he or his firm operated as legal counsel. Mr. Ramirez now understood that hiring White Brenner LLP was a strategic decision for Mayor Aguilar, Mayor Pro Tem Garcia, and Councilmember Kang to invest in cannabis cultivation within the city of Livingston, proving once again that they intended to place their interests ahead of Livingston residents. In or around July 2021, at the request of Livingston residents, the neighboring city of Atwater residents wrote a letter to Mr. Ramirez in which they discussed the various problems they had encountered with White Brenner LLP and the insane legal fees they were charged as a result. Mr. Ramirez brought these concerns to the City Council's attention without any success, as every council member except Councilmember Moran proceeded to approve White Brenner as the city's new legal counsel. Attorney Tom Hallinan, Attorney Hallinan, from White Brenner LLP was appointed as the City of Livingston's new city attorney. Sergeant Kang and Officer Here make a false report and are arrested following Chief Markle's report of the incident. On or about July 3, 2021, Sergeant Kang and Officer Here made contact with 2 Livingston residents, Marcia Nornberg, Mrs. Nornberg, and Stephen Nornberg, Mr. Nornberg. Sergeant Kang told Officer Here that he saw Mrs. Nornberg lighting illegal fireworks. Due to Mr. Nornberg's position as a State of California corrections officer, Sergeant Kang directed Officer Here to write the citation to Mrs. Nornberg to prevent Mr. Nornberg from getting in trouble at work. After watching the video footage of the incident, another sergeant reported the unlawful conduct to Chief Markle, who reviewed the body cam footage and reported the incident to Internal Affairs. In or around late July 2021, Sergeant Kang and Officer Here were arrested for violating Penal Code Section 181.1, false report by a peace officer. Mr. Ramirez is subjected to his 6th performance review, despite the outpour of support by Livingston residents. Soon thereafter, on July 20, 2021, the City Council met in a closed session to hold Mr. Ramirez's 6th performance evaluation within only 11 months. Despite Mr. Ramirez's insistence that his evaluation be reviewed in an open session, Attorney Hallinan denied the request and falsely stated that if council members held Mr. Ramirez's performance review in public, they could face liability. Attorney Hallinan stated, "Mayor, I would strongly advise you against that. In light of all of the allegations regarding city personnel, I believe that would be a tremendously bad idea and expose the council and the city to tremendous litigation exposure." Prior to the start of the closed session, Livingston residents came to speak out in support of Mr. Ramirez. One resident took to the podium and asked Attorney Hallinan, "Is it not public knowledge to know who put this on the agenda?" Attorney Hallinan responded, "No, it is not." Residents stated, "It is mind-boggling why the council keeps bringing it up again," referring to Mr. Ramirez's performance evaluation. "It just seems it is retaliation because of actions by some council members. This is looking like harassment. Who put this on the agenda? This is retaliation by the city council members." The city council refused to answer who had put Mr. Ramirez's performance evaluation on the agenda, and refused to answer why he had been subjected to 6 performance evaluations within less than a year. Attorney Hallinan stated, "I am done with these questions. They are ridiculous." Prior to the start of the closed session, District Attorney Lewis came and spoke on behalf of Mr. Ramirez. She stated, "It's my job to be involved in the quality of policing within the City of Livingston." She further stated, "Your city manager has done the best to guide you, counsel you, and encourage you to make sure you are under the correct operation of the law. And because of that, we at the District Attorney's Office stand behind your city manager, Mr. Ramirez." Despite the outpour of support from the community, in a closed session, the City Council decided to terminate Mr. Ramirez's contract in a 4-1 vote, with Councilmember Moran being the only dissenting vote against the termination. After the termination decision was released, Livingston residents congregated outside City Hall to protest the injustice and demand transparency. They held signs that stated, "I'm with Jose Ramirez," "Support the city manager," "Council do the ethical thing," "Why another evaluation?" On or about July 22, 2021, Attorney Larson completed an internal investigation into Sergeant Kang's complaint of an unauthorized disclosure of his performance evaluation. Attorney Larson admitted to basing his finding entirely on subjective evidence, writing, "I also recognize that no evidence outside of W. Kang's conclusively establishes that Ramirez disclosed the content of W. Kang's evaluation to people outside of W. Kang's chain of command." The city changes Mr. Ramirez's termination to "for cause" to avoid paying him 6-month severance per his employment contract. The next day, on July 23, 2021, the City Council decided to designate Mr. Ramirez's termination as "for cause," even though Attorney Larson found that there was a lack of evidence against Mr. Ramirez. The city unwarrantedly designated his termination as "for cause" in order to avoid paying him the 6-month severance he was entitled to pursuant to his employment contract. At the City Council meeting, Attorney Hallinan sat in the mayor's seat and informed Mr. Ramirez that he was terminated pursuant to the Livingston Code of Ordinances. When citizens took to the stand to demand answers regarding Mr. Ramirez's termination, Attorney Hallinan said, "This is not supposed to be the Jerry Springer show, and everyone gets to say what they want." Councilmember Moran releases YouTube video in which he exposes and confirms the many unethical deals within the City Council of Livingston involving the Kang Brothers. In or around August 2021, Councilmember Moran began posting YouTube videos in which he exposed many unethical and illegal dealings within City Council, particularly those involving the Kang Brothers. In one of the videos, he described his experience with Sergeant Kang and Councilmember Kang. He detailed an interaction in June 2020 wherein the Kang brothers asked him to be part of their team in exchange for a position as city clerk. They told Mr. Moran they already had 1,200 voter ballots signed and would just fill in the information, so he was sure to get the position. He also discussed that the Kang brothers were angry with Mr. Ramirez and blamed him for the city not wanting to fix their driveway. Chief Markle is placed on leave pending an investigation. In or around November 2021, Police Chief Markle was placed on administrative leave. Under Mr. Ramirez's information and belief, the administrative leave was a form of retaliation for investigating the events that led to Sergeant Kang's arrest. Conclusion. Councilmember Kang's and Sergeant Kang's actions of retaliation were directed at Mr. Ramirez as they blamed him for the denial of their sidewalk driveway modification. The Kang Brothers, along with other city council members, used their position of power for their own benefits. They hatched a plan to get rid of Mr. Ramirez because Mr. Ramirez's moral and ethical standards threatened their interest. Despite multiple complaints by Mr. Ramirez reporting such unethical dealing and his concerns of retaliation, the City of Livingston failed to protect Mr. Ramirez and ultimately terminated his employment and breached his contract. The injuries sustained by Mr. Ramirez, as far as known as of the date of presentation of this claim, consist of lost past and future wages, lost past and future benefits, and other special and general damages according to proof. The claim, as presently calculated, would not be a limited civil case. Please note that all notices and communications in regard to this claim should be sent to claimant in care of, there's the attorney's name, the address, email, telephone number, fax, and all that stuff. Then there is the final paragraph. Pursuant to Livingston City Code, this tort claim is filed with the city clerk at the address listed above. However, if this is the incorrect office or individual to file such a claim with, please provide me with the correct contact and mailing information and the signature. You'd think that just because I read this and didn't add editorial comment or commentary of any kind on there, that I really shouldn't have to add a disclaimer, but I'm going to do it anyway. Any views or opinions I express on these videos are my own and do not represent the views or opinions of the City Council or City of Livingston. Unless, of course, I am using direct quotes or video from City Council or other public meetings, then it's pretty obvious whose opinion is whose. Copies of source documentation available upon request.